Hi, I'm Bruce Burke. I'm here with my good friend John Owens. We're talking about the upcoming Fin+AI 2024 conference and exhibition that's going to take place October 2nd through the 4th down in beautiful Dania Beach, Florida. Uh, our keynote speakers, we just announced yesterday, are going to be Chris Skinner and Paulo Cerrone from the Financier and IBM, respectively. And John is going to be also participating in the event. And John has quite a background in financial services and working with a lot of different projects. So I invited John on to uh, do a little bit of a curtain raiser about the event and talk a little bit about his experience in fintech. And I think, John, you're going to be involved in the democratization. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. You're going to be involved in the democratizing finance part of it. And so tell me a little bit about your background and then how you see AI working with the emerging markets and all that sort of stuff, right?
Sure. Well, Bruce, thanks for inviting me. I'm really pleased and honored to be here. I started out my journey and looking at, financial inclusion. In those days, it was really kind of starting out the early days of access to finance back in the early 1990s. I've been doing this now for over 30 years. I started working in emerging markets. As you mentioned, I'm a lawyer by background and an accountant. So I have a finance background and a legal regulatory background. But I started working in the Caribbean. I actually initially was a Peace Corps volunteer working on access to finance and SME finance issues, and then joined USAID in Jamaica, went on to Latin America, to Bolivia, where we were doing a lot of work on changing regulations to expand outreach. And I've always been interested in the technology side. In those days, it was just getting to using initially, just a laptop to enter data as opposed to the old forms that we filled out. And then, of course, that changed to Palm Pilots and of course, tablets over time. And then I went to work in Asia after working in the Caribbean and Latin America. And I think it was there that I really got excited about the use of technology. As you know, when we met, we started looking at mobile payments back in 2004, about 2 years before M-Pesa launched in Kenya. And we were one of the first places in the world to really start looking at the issue of mobile payment from the standpoint of how that could expand access to finance and financial inclusion kind of at the grassroots level. And that was very exciting in the Philippines. And then, of course, a lot of people started to visit us. We met a lot of people. And it was exciting times. I was able to meet people like Pierre Midyar from, at that point, had owned Midyar, PayPal, eBay, and of course, went on to meet Bill Gates, ended up working on a Gates-supported initiative, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, where I was basically working with regulators and policymakers from 95 countries around the world on access to finance issues from a policy regulatory side. Prior to that, I've been working mostly with industry groups, bankers associations, looking at, in those days we used to call mobile e-money, e-money operators. But I've had the opportunity to go all around the world. And so it's exciting, I think, to see how, finance has changed through the use of technology and now, of course, AI.
So you and I connected way, way, way back. I believe it was you that apprised me of the fact that I was mentioned in some kind of top influencers in mobile payments that somebody put
Correct.
out. I know I was in one with Scott Bales and
Correct.
some of the other guys. that was the OboPay
Right.
report.
That's correct.
But there was another one that you and I were both in. It was like top 100 or something. And uh, it's funny that, like, in retrospect, uh, I met a lot of people, you and like Collier Rice and James Wester, right? And a lot of people, when I was writing like the mobile payments today, I was writing a column for mobile
Right.
payments today, and that kind of rose me in status and made me a little more visible. And uh, today, that's now owned by Informa, right? And we just did
Right.
our press release for the event on the thing, so it's kind of full circle for me, right?
Right. Right.
But you've been doing this like way before I even like thought of social mobile payments, right? I didn't do that till I ended up at the GSMA working group over there in
Right.
Singapore that Bill Gates started, right? And
Right.
that was the end of like where you came in at the beginning, right?
Right.
That was the final report from all that work and effort and energy and money and everything else. And really interesting sessions up there in Singapore. You weren't at that event though, were you? Where they had the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation there at GSMA in
I was
Singapore?
No, I was not at the one in Singapore, but I was at several GSMA events over the years. In different locations where we did get together, particularly with the International Telecommunications Union, to come up with looking at policies and regulations. But so I did do a lot of interaction uh, throughout Southeast Asia, and of course, I'd say in all seven regions of the world: Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, the Pacific, both Southeast Asia and South Asia. So it was and China, of course, and Russia. It was very interesting to be able to go to all these different markets and see what people were working on. And of course, that's where I really began to see that mobile was a big driver. 20 years ago it was all about mobile, and mobile's still a big part of it, but we have a lot of other countries where it's not just mobile. There are other digital forms, and so that's why we changed from. In fact, when I was at the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, the working group I was working with was a mobile financial services working group. We changed that while I was there to the digital financial services working group to include people like Kiwi, which was doing a lot of work with kiosks and these smart kiosks in Russia and across Eastern Europe, and other places where we began to see the use of smart cards and various smart ATMs and other ways apart from the mobile channel. But the mobile channel continues to be the biggest driver. In fact, I'll be going to Cambodia next week, and I'm very excited to go back there again because I've watched the dramatic increase in access to finance through the mobile channel. And of course, I think AI is beginning to make like bring things to the next level in terms of when we look at access to finance and kind of what we call financial deepening. It's not just about getting somebody to open up an account, but getting them to be able to use that account. And the tools that we have, just over the last 12 months, everything has changed from what we were looking at even a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
So so you've been doing this, a long, 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 long time,
Correct.
and you've been all over the world and been in multiple places. And which one is the most effective? Which one has the best uptake, and which one is the most effective, basically?
Okay, that's a very hard question to answer because it really comes down to cultural context. Um, so, for example, in the United States, it's a very different market, and it's why the equivalent of, say, an M-Pesa didn't quite work the way people, we had PayPal Mobile really tried to kind of take off, and PayPal has continued, it exists, and we have Zelle now. The banks got involved, kind of made it more expensive to deal with Venmo and PayPal because they actually charged and they made, Zelle free. So the U.S. it and Europe, I would say, are very different markets than, say, uh, um, the emerging markets of the world. The emerging markets, you've got limited, the challenge is that we have limited infrastructure. So in a lot of markets, like in the United States or Europe, everybody has a credit card, or a large percentage people have credit cards. They're pretty easy to get. There's a good point of sale machine distribution. So those physical cards, you know, here continue. But in a lot of markets where getting that infrastructure was very expensive and it was kind of a chicken and egg thing, and to produce cards and get POS, and we realized we didn't really need a physical card. The phone could do the whole thing. So we kind of, in emerging markets, they've leapfrogged over the physical card market, and most things are done now on a phone. And I don't, in some markets like Cambodia, I don't even see the need anymore for producing physical cards, because everything can be done using a mobile phone. I don't need to spend a lot of money for an expensive point of sale system. I could do it phone to phone, and facilitate, for a country of that size, almost all my transactions on a phone. Very similar to, even in China and India, Thailand, Africa, Kenya, for example. These are markets where, the infrastructure was a real issue. So they sort of leapfrogged over. So a lot depends on the infrastructure. The other part of it does depend quite a bit on cultural context. So Cambodia, very young population because of their history, and that has made them very willing to try new technologies. So where you've got other markets, maybe Indonesia or the Philippines, where slightly older generation people might be a little more suspicious or concerned about the security of a mobile payment, you don't have that in a place like Cambodia, where people kind of just jumped into it. And again, you had the COVID pandemic, where people thought money, rightly so, could transport, or transmit, I should say, the virus to other people, and money was, dirty, and because of that, you had this, and a lot of people couldn't do face-to-face transactions, so that whole remote transaction really grew dramatically during the COVID pandemic, particularly in emerging markets where they didn't really have an alternative. So it took the place of facilitating commerce, and really simplified things. And you had people, very young population. So Cambodia during that period grew 400% in digital payments. And if you look at it,
Wow.
there are more digital payment accounts in Cambodia than there are Cambodians, because a lot of people have, more than one account. But it's really digital. It's really the mobile phone that has helped bring people in to the financial system. And of course, Cambodia is interesting because we talked about this before. They've decided not to charge an interchange fee. So they're literally, mobile payments are free for both the small businesses and the individuals. At one point, they probably will be charging, at least for the higher value transactions. But we're beginning to see a trend for micropayments not to charge a fee for them. It just, because there's a value proposition for the customers, and then getting them into the system and making them use it, it's not necessarily a loss leader, but you could look at it that way, because you've got all that data, and you can then use it, particularly, as I said, with artificial intelligence today, to look at everything from providing credit, or moving excess money into a savings account. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the data without focusing just on the payment side. So that's, I think, where I get excited about that nexus between, the next generation of getting mobile payments to basically be free, because you can offer so many other services that build on the mobile payment rails. And, that's, we can get to the point where remittance costs are very, very low. Basically, as long as people are using it digitally and they're not having to convert it into cash, you could, basically make it, very, very cheap and affordable for people.
Is there any statistics as to how much more secure, or how much less loss there is with people using mobile, even in transition from cards or from what there was before mobile? Like how much safer is it? How much more secure is it? Um,
Um, you know, there's fraud in everything that, any kind of digital payment system. There's fraud, but there's much less fraud in, I find, in mobile payments than there is in, say, checks or credit cards. If you look at the ability, that's why, for a long time the U.S. was one of the few holdouts to going to chip and pin. We were still using mag stripes, and there are places where they still do. And to be honest, when my card has been skimmed, and it happened, when we had it almost every year, usually, unfortunately, oftentimes at like gas stations, um, that I was having fraud from my accounts on a fairly regular basis. And I'll be honest, I've never had a problem on for mobile payments. There are challenges and issues, and people can be, just like you get the email spam, where you click on it, and somebody could say, send me some money, give me this. They
yeah.
can, we have problems with Zelle and others. It's usually users not being well trained about how to protect themselves. So I'm not saying that there aren't challenges, but I find it to be, for the most part, generally more secure than credit cards. And even, the QR codes, I work in a lot of markets where they're doing QR code payments to facilitate transactions. There are EMV standards, which many countries are adopting to make it more secure for QR code payments. And again, I'll use my Apple Pay at a store because, and I've told many store, personnel this, I feel safer using Apple Pay than I would using a magstripe in a store. And the reality is that, I they can't, we've had
You're not
these data
introducing a
leaks.
card to their device, right? You're not
Yeah,
inserting a card. You're not swiping a card. You're not even pulling a card out
correct.
of your wallet in this case, right?
Yeah, and they're not getting
When
that data. So it's
yeah,
protected. So if you look at it, Apple Pay is a lot more secure, just as an example, than paying with a credit card. We've had the problems with the Targets and the others that had security breaches, and that, all that data was the card-based data became an issue, but you wouldn't have that with an Apple Pay because they do create that kind of added security feature.
now I know there's some restrictions on this, but when you're traveling to these different countries and you're a lot of times you're working in working groups and you're not on the ground actually like implement, you're not installing the devices and crawling around under the counters or anything. You're more for policy and that kind of stuff. But while you're in these countries, are you using the mobile payment services that you're helping them
You
attain?
bet.
Are you using it yourself?
Oh, yes. I learned this from Bill Gates. You know, you got to walk the talk. If I'm going to like promote a product and I'm not using it regularly, it doesn't make sense. I've got to
Right.
be understanding it from the user. So when I started with mobile payments, I kept a feature phone even when we started smartphones because the majority of people had a feature phone. And I paid in the Philippines when I first started this, I was paying my driver, the people who work for me. I was doing my electric bill payment. I was doing everything on the phone and using a feature phone because I wanted to understand the issue. When I went to Nigeria and I was looking at mobile payments, this was 10 years ago, I registered for all 19 mobile payment apps at the time that were available. And I
Wow.
actually learned how to use them and it was funny because it was kind of one company that was white labeling the solution for most of the banks. So the user experience was the same. But I learned about the timeout issues, downloading. Oh, if I get down, I've learned that when I was doing this, I had to use it. So even when I go, Cambodia, I'll get a phone and I'll register and I'll use it when I'm going around and using my, I'll load my ABA Pay or Wing, and I'll use the transact just like I did with Gcash for many, many years. This was, I started working with Gcash 20 years ago in 2004, 2 years before M-Pesa launched. So I was a big user. So for me and all my staff, I even we were paying part of their salaries in mobile electronic money just to force them to use it, because I said, you can't be out there kind of recommending and using. If you're not using it yourself, forget it. You've got to learn.
Yeah.
We fed the issues back. If there was an issue, I generally knew it from my own experience and fed it back. So I'm a very much an advocate for promoting it. And I'll sit down when I go to Cambodia. I sit down with little tricycle drivers and we talk about, how they, if I had to do it through a translator, or little shops like, oh, I see you're using QR code. How's it going? And, I try to do as much understanding of users at the ground level, interviewing them, understanding them, the agents, the clients, the businesses, even the financial institutions, so that I know what the experiences are firsthand and what the challenges are. I did the same. I was in Bangladesh last year, and I spent a lot of time in the field with Bcash agents, and we were talking to the agents in the field, and I talked to the Bcash operators. I talked to the clients who were using it, the problems that they had, and many of them didn't. So again, Cambodia, I was there a little over a year and a half ago. I'm going about 14 months ago, and I'm going back again next week. It was very exciting to see that, in a lot of markets, people will complain about this or that. I don't hear any complaints in Cambodia. And I'm not sure if that's because the operators are doing such a good job of just, if there's a problem or an issue or fraud or whatever, just like taking care of it. But people are not having the kind of issues of sending the wrong money to the wrong person, or having timeout issues, at least not what I'm seeing to the level in some other markets. So we're beginning to see a change. But again, I always use it. If I could never recommend it to anybody if I don't force myself to use it as well. That's
I
my
don't think I've heard the term
philosophy.
feature phone for about 10 years. I don't think I've heard that term in a long
Well,
time.
remember, I was talking 20 years ago. So I used a feature phone. I used a feature phone up until, I would say, up to 2016. So about 8 years
Wow.
ago. I forced
I
myself
saw an
because a lot
article
of markets,
today.
that's where it's available.
I saw an article today. I didn't post it because it was on one of those websites that, when you're on the phone, they'll show you a paragraph and then there's an ad and then there's another, right? And there's no way to copy the text, right? They got too many ads in the way. So much stuff pops up that you can't even see the article, right? But it was an article about how India is starting to work with the Ministry of the Philippines to develop more mobile payments in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And I
So
found that
India,
really that's kind of weird to me. I didn't think
not
that would.
really.
I didn't see that relationship. What's that relationship? What is that?
Okay. So India, India developed the Aadhaar system and the unified payment interface. So what they've done is they've developed a national approach to the adoption of digital payments in a way that we haven't seen in a lot of other markets, because, the digital ID, we've got India Stack. So the government's kind of made it very easy for people to take their data and share it, and because India has done so well at this, they're now looking at becoming a fairly major player, both regionally for regional payments, particularly in South Asia, but also across the ASEAN, Southeast Asia. They're signing agreements to share their experiences. And a lot of people want to learn because India has grown so quickly, probably quicker than in, you know, just about any other market in the world. And I think the way they did it, different from China, of course. China also grew, but again, China's a little bit different because of the way the economy and the government is structured. But India faces many of the challenges. You go to Bangladesh or you go to Nepal or you go to Sri Lanka. You know, these are markets that are all facing similar uh, 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 um, kind of challenges. A country like India plays a very, very important role. So I recently did do a report on, which is coming out soon on UPI, and how they're now taking this regionally to share with other countries, and they have signed agreements to basically take what they've learned and promote it. And this has been a policy of the country. So you're beginning to see India, I think, using this as their experiences and sharing it. To become kind of a big regional player, and take advantage of that infrastructure and help develop that infrastructure. So it sort of becomes, I don't want to say, you've had the Visa and MasterCard, which has had a kind of duopoly on the payments infrastructure. So other countries are now looking at being able to promote mobile payments in a very unique way. And India, I think, as a country, has come in. China as well. You see Ant Financial, which is part of Alibaba's network, which did very well in with Alipay in China and WeChat Pay, and they've also made major investments across Southeast Asia. So you kind of have these plays between India and China in terms of, well, I would say the two big companies in China, the Tencent and Alibaba, or the Ant Financial Group, that
Yeah.
have made very big plays. And then from the India standpoint, it's more, I would say, more of the government that's been involved. But those have had a big impact on many of them, investments in mobile payments and the use of, trying to come up with, whether they be standards on QR code payments, sharing experiences from either China or in India. I think it's very easy in China because everybody, if you want to do anything, you've got to be, registered and in the system, and everybody has an ID. But India had to actually um, get everybody registered because they didn't all have, identification. It wasn't all digital. So they went through that process. So I think that experience, at that conversion process, is a very unique one. And it's one that we're beginning to see the lessons learned that are applied to countries like the Philippines, which are trying to adopt a digital identification system and how to do that securely and everything else. So it's interesting times. And the countries that are able to adopt that um, identification infrastructure, basically a digitalized ID, are the ones that tend to grow quickest because then you can, identify people, um, do that KYC, that knowing your customer, knowing your client base, where you can actually know that, who is doing what and authenticate transactions, authenticate, people who want to open up accounts. And that's, I think, where, the countries that are lagging, where they're working on now.
So, in turning to kind of the theme of the event, right? And I understand that, in the emerging markets, they're dealing with feature phones still. Most of them are running around with what we used to call the candy bar phones, right? It's just a simple phone with a simple screen and a 10-digit
Push button
keypad,
phone.
and that's pretty much, yeah, very, very, very cheap, very lightweight, very non-feature rich, right? Very simple, right? Um, but AI really doesn't need a lot of onboard resources to actually work. It just needs a good connection back to the server.
Yeah.
So How do you see, obviously, with India starting to have an influence over, countries like Philippines and that sort of thing? How do you see how how will AI help those markets?
So I think what's exciting about AI is a number of things. We could look at it from the policy regulatory side, and I'll talk about that next. We can look at it from the financial institution side of things. We can look at it at the business side of things, and we can look at it at the client or customer side of things. So if we start with the client or customer side of things, years ago, we were looking at the use of chatbots to help people with financial literacy, to be able to train them and they could ask questions. It's surprisingly when you ask people, do you have access to the internet? And they say, not really. Do you have Facebook? Oh, yeah, yeah, I have Facebook. So, they all, markets like Indonesia, Brazil, the Philippines, Myanmar, Cambodia, these are markets where people actually open up Facebook on a regular basis. And so many of the chatbots originally were built on Facebook, and people were being able to, create a messenger app that you could friend and you could ask questions to. The, so the original AI was basically a decision tree where we had to program all the answers and we didn't have generative AI like we do today. So that changes that model a lot. We found these to be very efficient ways to help people to, plan for their financial health. But today, with generative AI, you could basically ask the phone, through your phone those who even have access to, say, a Facebook AI, they could ask and say, I'd like to, these are the expenses I have. I want to make sure I have enough money set aside to cover these expenses and basically could analyze. And we can now open up my data to an AI. Again, it should be ring fenced, but I can open up an AI that will allow me to better plan my financial activities and my financial health, so to speak. So there's a very exciting if I want to look for where can I get a loan, I can ask. And with that data being available and now AI being able to search the internet, I could say, I want to know this is where I live, this is my background, which institutions could approach me. In fact, the AI could even help me to complete a virtual loan application. So I could say, I need help with this application. Here's my data, my information. It could fill it out. I don't even need to spend the time filling out the application because it can help me to do that. It could, and then from the institution standpoint, it could, we used to do big data analytics, spend a lot of money. Also, the business side, it can now, you could ask it to say, I'd like to identify, if I'm a business, customers who come in regularly, so that I could offer a little discount to get them to come more regularly. And before I had to kind of do that manually. Now the system can do that. The same thing with a financial institution. I could look at everybody's got certain volumes in my financial institution and offer them maybe a credit card or credit, or maybe help them with a time deposit because they've got money that they don't really, that's sitting there that they could use more efficiently, or, micro investments, whatever it may be. So there are a lot of things, or I could even use it today. A lot of credit scoring models, we used to spend a lot of time designing those. Today, AI could help me because I can even give it the parameters and say, this is what I'm looking for. And it could do the analysis and then even follow up and say, the people that you're granting credit to, there's a continuing issue here. We need to change the credit score. AI could monitor that for you in a way that we couldn't before. And on the policy regulatory side, I'm seeing the opportunity, a lot of regulations. We spend a lot of time developing regulations for markets. And of course, you have to study what other countries are doing. You have to look at your own context. That takes time. If I'm able to upload all of those similar laws and say, here's my legal regulatory framework in this particular market. And here are a whole bunch of examples from other markets. Could you give me an example? I'd like the following. It could do an analysis for you. What would have taken a consultant or a team of people, you know, several weeks to do, it could be done in a matter of minutes with an analysis. And of course, you'd have to clean it up, but at least you could generate uh, um, from the data that's out there a lot of ideas and suggestions for policies, regulations, laws in ways that would have taken us much longer to design and develop. So I think, from a to be able to monitor what's going on, to be able to design things, whether, again, all the way from the government policy, regulators, financial institutions, businesses to the consumer. That's what's exciting. And this has all changed, I'd say, in the
So
last
it's not
12
just
months.
for the consumer; it's for the full stack of everybody in
Yeah.
the value chain, right?
And
So
ultimately,
let me
the
ask you a
consumer should
question about
benefit.
something. I read an article, and I think I talked to somebody a while back that they're doing a new kind of credit scoring where, uh, or they're, I guess it's really not credit scoring; it's more of authenticating the user by the user's behavior on mobile, like how they interact with the keypad, how they interact with the
Oh,
device, how they use it, and they're essentially the AI is kind of like learning how the user uses the phone, and then if that user doesn't seem like he's using the same phone the way he was before, and he's trying to access the money aspect of it, then it kind of locks it down and it won't allow him to do things. And have you dealt with any of that kind of stuff on projects you've worked on?
yes, yes. There was, when we looked, there were many who started looking at these kind of mobile-based credit scoring systems. So they were basically looking at certain parameters to develop credit scores and determine who could get a loan. This was very popular in Kenya, the Philippines. There were several companies that were involved with this. And so when they looked at it, they basically saw who was a better credit risk. If I put in uh, if I was very organized and I put in the first name and the last name of everybody in my phone directory, I'm an organized person that raises my credit score. If I didn't, then it would lower that. Maybe I'm very, I'm literate and not making, issues or mistakes that again raises my credit score. I'm using my phone. Let's say I'm a business person where and I need to be able to see that, customers are coming in and accessing me. I look at the number of calls coming in from different numbers to see if this person has a very active business environment. If they're where they're supposed to be, oftentimes geolocating somebody, if they're in their shop and, their shop is a shop-based business, they're good, they're there and they're managing the business. If they're always out somewhere else, um, maybe that would be a little bit of a risk. The things that
Yeah,
they put on social
if
media.
they're at the cantina every night, right? Maybe not so much. Give them so much money, right? Don't extend
There,
them a
there,
big line of credit.
there were. I've seen some markets where they were looking at, people who were maybe spending money on things like alcohol, or, in China, we see the social credit score. You're spending money on diapers. You're a good, productive person. You're using it to buy liquor. You may be a difference. So there are, the social credit scoring that, China is also, I think they took it at a different angle, but we are seeing people using mobile data. The social media aspect of it, you're talking about, in the Philippines, a lot of people are looking at leaving, migrating to go and work abroad. And if they start posting online, they're looking at, I don't know, doing a lot of searches on going to Hong Kong, for example, and you're trying to give them a credit and you're worried, oh, this person may be going to, a little flag in the system that, you should be careful. This person, it might be a migration risk. So, again, that was a particular challenge in markets like the Philippines. So there are uses of data where people are using things. I think this is originally everybody got very excited about it, but then there was a lot of data privacy issues. Do people, you know, is that fair for people if, you're looking at whether they go to a liquor store or, they're geolocating, is that data when you're creating that access to the data, uploading my contact list for collections, for example, and then everybody on my contact list gets spammed when I don't make a payment? Are there, so a lot of, no, it happens. It happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm
And
sure it does. Yeah.
and so we had to come up, and I worked in Indonesia where we were working with P2P lenders who were using a lot of this mobile data, particularly the contact list for collection purposes. And we had lots of people complaining. So we had to come up with industry codes of conduct, uh, to make sure that, and Indonesia, I think the FinTech Association I work with, the P2P Lending Association, did do a very good job of trying to deal with this. Of course, there were a lot of fly-by-night operators who were setting up apps on Google Play Store that were, targeting and abusing data. So we're now to the point where people need to be able to understand their data and how it's being used, and then making sure that there are parameters for the institutions, or now with AI, making sure that that AI data is secured and not being shared with everybody. If I want to share it and it's for a particular purpose, that's what it should be for only. And it should be, if I want to delete it, I should have that option to do so. So part of it is these challenge, the European GDPR, rules on data privacy um, are becoming more standard around the world, and this also impacts AI. So a lot of it is the data privacy issues, and of course, uh, cybersecurity and data security issues to make sure that who's looking at it, who has access to it, uh, is my data secure.
So do you think um, AI could take someone who is essentially financially illiterate and make them native language fluent in financials? Do you think it could help someone that much, or does someone need to be so far along where that it could pick up and carry on from there?
I think I don't even think you need to necessarily be lit. You can get to the point where the tool could help provide and give you guidance. So, for example, if I want to manage my finances better because I've got, loan payments and bill payments coming up, and I don't always have enough money. I'm running out of money. I'm juggling one bill to the next. And if I had a tool that I put in, these are the bills that are coming due. These are, and here's my cash flow. How much of a cushion do I need to be able to manage, do I have enough or don't I have enough? AI could give me answers and guide me and say, you a little reminder, you got a bunch of payments coming up next week. You may not want to spend this money. You want to, keep a certain amount. And then if you go below that. So I think we could get to the point where the tools could help guide people. If I want to access a loan, if I, don't want, don't have the ability to fill out all the data, and I may not be fully literate to read the whole form, the AI could probably help me do it, even by talking to it. And
Yeah,
it could ask me the question. So whether it's going to make me financial literate or whether it's a tool like a calculator, I may not need to even think about it like the calculator. I may not need to be able to manually do all the equations. My calculator is helping me do it. It could be very similar type of tool to help people, guide them through the process and help them better manage their both their finances on a day-to-day basis and also opportunities, whether it be on the credit side or helping me maybe make a remittance or savings instrument, where to go to cash out, whether it be, we ask Siri, where's the local ATM? And many of these markets could tell me where an agent is or uh, uh, a location for me if I needed to cash out. So um, I think, or even for businesses to be able to promote the services that they offer, or facilitate their payment information, so they could become a better credit, have a better credit score. So moving digitally also helps small businesses, maybe even a tricycle driver. I've got a whole bunch of data about how many people I've been writing. If I'm, in Cambodia, and most of my payments are coming in digitally, I can now go and get a loan to get my tricycle serviced, um, because I've got a tracker. They know how much money I'm bringing in every day. So think about that. I think that's where it gets exciting, and it's a tool that will not necessarily make everybody per se financially literate, although there are training tools that can help, but it can be a tool that can make them improve their financial health, just like a calculator would doing basic math equations, I believe.
So, in anytime I get into one of these discussions about the emerging markets, it always kind of leads to the concept, for me anyway, in my head, of, and this may be a whole nother conversation, but briefly, let's touch on universal basic income, right? The UBI. I read a story about at, at OpenAI. There's this whole study that they're doing about essentially the AI could generate, it could go to work for you and generate enough money every month to where you have a basic income, and everybody would have a basic income because the robots, quote unquote, robots could be generating it for you. Um, how do you see that in relation to the emerging market? Do you think that could become a reality? Do you think we could become so prosperous where everybody would automatically get a doo-wop every month at the beginning of the month to cover all their, you know, needs?
I mean, we've looked at um, conditional cash transfers, government cash transfers, and this has been done for many years. The World Bank, many countries, India does a lot of social government payments. Um, so a lot of it, they're to be able to provide people with the money that they need for, basic needs. Um, uh, the Philippines has, a huge number of markets now have conditional cash transfers. I think the data about the usefulness of that, is coming in still. People are excited about it. I think when we look at so I think a lot of it were these, government cash transfers, payments, but you also see opportunities that the data that I have about me and my interests, I could sell in a sense. I could say that I'd like to get, my behavior and everything else. I could actually, you have markets where you can sell some of that data, or I could be getting uh, um, some kind of credit. You have market. Think about Dick's Sporting Goods. They, for your Apple Watch, if you're walking around every day, they give you the equivalent of spending $3 in the store every day, um, uh, as a credit, and not if you spent $3, you get 3 points. So, for example, when you've spent $300, you get a $10, coupon. So over 100 days, you'd have a coupon where, you're basically making 10 cents a day for just walking around. As long as you walk around, so in a sense, they're paying you um, to exercise. And help you. And so we could see other financial institutions or other people, if you're spending, you're buying things, if you agree to share that data about, your spending habits, and they could give you an incentive of 10 cents a day, for example, to be able to use as a voucher for other things, we could see a point where, particularly if you got multiple ones of this, where people could be making, a little bit of money from their behavior. So that could be the private sector side of it. And of course, then the government wanting to come in with, cash transfers, government safety nets to help people. And even, I saw this in Malaysia where people were given cash transfers, and the Malaysian, oftentimes these were also done by uh, um, Muslim groups who wanted to make sure people weren't using it to buy liquor or something like that. So there were things that you could use, just like I guess in the U.S. when you're getting certain money food stamps. You can only use it for a certain product. You can't use it to go buy alcohol and things like that. So it's the same thing, and it was a digital transfer. And these were foundations who wanted to support people, um, I saw people there, getting their digital, payments to their card or their phone, and they were able to, go to the store and buy what they needed uh, um, through these safety nets. So I think, you have foundations that want to do this, you have governments that want to do it, you have the business sector who want to, get your data or promote your data to encourage some kind of activity. So I think we're get to the point where the data I have will be something I'm able to share and get an incentive from. Um, uh, Whether that's going to be universal basic income, I don't know, but there are opportunities, I think, and AI will help to identify those people and their uses of those financial services, probably in ways that a couple of years ago we couldn't do.
Yeah, even here in the U.S., I mean, I have Florida Blue as my insurance company, right? And they offer even, hey, we want you to do these series of exercises. First, we want you to set a goal, and then we want you to come back here. And if you set these goals and you come back here and you do this stuff,
Give you a
we're going to
discount,
give you X credit towards your bill, right?
right?
They do that, right? And that's
Right.
here in America, right? So that could definitely be done in other countries, right?
Yeah.
And in other ways and with other services, right? And I
Oh
just
yeah.
think about all the, you know, when to plant crops, right? When to harvest crops, what town to take the crops to sell the best for the most money,
Yep.
right? Uh, any number of things, right? That AI could do for somebody who is kind of like living by their wits, right? It could
Sure.
essentially guide you so you make better decisions. You make uh, 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 and as a result, you're more prosperous. And as a result of
Sure.
you being more prosperous, every other person is more prosperous. And, it just compounds, right? It's a compounding thing. And like you said, it's not just the consumer level and it's not just the retailer. Then it's, it's the banks, it's the government, and then it's, everybody, right? It's
Um,
all inclusive. So it's
yeah.
kind of neat. You're talking about chatbots earlier, and we were talking about GSMA when we first, got in here, right? And when I went to the GSMA summit there, the Bill and Melinda Gates thing, I flew from Florida to Singapore and didn't sleep. I don't think maybe an hour over the course of the 24 that I flew there, right? And I got there at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and the session started at 8, right? And I'm sitting in the back, and there was a guy from Telefonica up on the stage, and he was doing his thing, and I was all the way in the back row, and I found myself with my head back and mouth open and snoring. So I walked outside, and I'm sitting there, and I'm talking to, of all people, to like kind of come back to chatbots, Peter DeVilliers from Clickatel, right?
Okay.
And
Yes.
now
Yes.
like and he was doing all that stuff like way, way, way
Yes.
back
That's right.
then, right?
That's right.
And now it's like it's the thing now, right?
That's right. Yes. I remember using Clickatel for the purposes of gathering market research. We were sending SMS surveys out through Clickatel years ago. Those were the early days where we, for SMS surveys, it was a very useful tool. So I agree. And getting back to what you were saying, I just wanted to go back about the farmers. I'm seeing real interesting opportunities when it comes to a lot of farmers in emerging markets kind of are at the mercy of the middlemen, the traders who come in and, particularly in rice and you look at Bangladesh and the Philippines, parts of Africa where, whoever comes in and offers them money, they don't even know what the market price is. So they're having to negotiate. But the ability now for me to check what the prices are in different markets and maybe go directly, say I have this quality, this quantity, and I'd like to be able to sell it. Who's available? What's the price? That can open up opportunities in ways that we couldn't beforehand. So I agree. When you talk about democratizing finance and kind of leveling the playing field, uh, uh, AI could do this in ways that I think are really exciting.
It really would be redefining financial intelligence at the most literal sense, right? It really would be, right?
Well,
That's
it,
the theme
it
of the
is.
event. So I have to
It
come
is.
back to
It's
that,
happening. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. We're just beginning to see the opportunities, but it is happening. This is evolving from the old, the original chatbots. I think about Mr. Finance in Myanmar, where people were talking to, Mr. Finance on Facebook Messenger, and I found it to be an amazing tool. I went to Ukraine. We talked to Ukrainians about it. This is prior to the war, and people there were very excited. Of course, a lot of the chatbot developers are in Ukraine. So I didn't realize that when I talked to Facebook, they told me, yeah, more than half of the chatbot developers at the time were actually Ukrainians. This was back in 2018. So
wow.
those early days when we were looking at the use of chatbots prior to generative AI, um, it's I got excited because I saw the impact it could have. And today, with generative AI, it's even more exciting. And as I said, these things that we're talking about are being experimented in the field now, and we're going to see this explode. And I don't believe the convergence of I think we're at a new level of fintech and AI. I think that it's not going to be something that's just a blip, like something for this year. I think this is going to be not only for the short term but the medium term. We're going to be seeing new advances, particularly as these tools get better. They're able to access data on the internet in a safe way, of course, and be able to search. It'll be. You think about Siri today. Can you imagine if Siri can look? I could give permission to Siri, which right now is sort of limited, to basically Safari type searches or Google's Alexa. But when you get to the point where that can actually give you the information that's available online, like we're seeing with Gemini now, Bard before, or ChatGPT, uh, those and we're only 12 months in, and I think we're beginning to see this really grow and become a very exciting thing. So that's why I'm excited. I know my friend Chris Skinner is going to be there, has been writing about this, or is coming up with a new book on this, and I'm excited because I know this is really, kind of the future direction of. I think when we talk about democratizing finance, this will probably be more impactful than it'll be a seismic shift. I think in terms of not just access, but deepening the access of financial services at all the levels. Like I said, how policy and regulation is done, how institutions do it, how businesses can use data, and primarily at the end of the day, it's all about consumers and how consumers can take advantage of this. And I don't care what market you're in, whether it be the U.S. or Europe or an emerging market. we're going to see different approaches to it, but it's very powerful, and it'll be an amazing. It is, and it will continue to be an amazing tool, and that's why I'm so excited, Bruce, about your event. And I think this is going to be uh, you know, I'm excited. When you ask me about, what are the things I'm most excited about, I'm really excited to meet other people who are there. I'm excited to share what I'm seeing around the world, and opportunities, because I think sometimes we look at things with blinders. We're in a particular market. We look at only, what we're doing in our market, but there's so many lessons to be learned around the world, and that's why I love what I do, because I get to see so many different things, and can put some of those pieces together, that sometimes, people who have been looking at it with blinders don't always have the opportunity to do. And again, AI is going to make that for a lot of people a lot more easier to do, than, our past ability to research things online, for example.
Okay, great. Well, I see we're coming into the station on an hour here, so I really want to thank you for your perspective here and your input, and also your participation in the show. You were one of the first to know about it. You actually got to see where we're having it and everything there. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to put this. I'm going to have this edited and put this out in the next few days here. And this is going to be the first of many, folks. Subscribe, like, share, follow, all that stuff. Right? Do all that stuff. But most of all, go visit our website, finaiconference.com. Register today or submit your speaking proposal. We've got 5 different tracks. We've got enhanced security. We've got democratizing finance. We've got secure, frictionless transactions. We've got wealth management. Automated investing. There's any number of topics focused around fintech as a whole and AI more specifically. And I really think this is going to be a great event. I think this is going to be better than any event I've ever done. And I think Chris kicking off the event, I couldn't believe, John. You and I talked that night that we met in Dania Beach, right at the hotel, and we talked about the 5 aspects of the event that I had put together, right, which essentially have become the tracks now. And when Chris told me about his book and he sent me the link to his book, I started looking at the talking points of his book. It's not verbatim word for word, but his talking points about the book are the same names as the tracks for the event. And I said, we couldn't become any more aligned than we are right now. So he's going to be a great show opener and set the pace for the event without even like having to think about doing that, because his book is totally focused on that. That's his new book, Intelligent Money, folks. It's going to be debuting at Fin+AI 2024. The U.S. debut, it will be out over in the U.K. and that before that, but the U.S. debut, book signing, meet the author,
That's great.
right there at the event. And also Paulo,
Paulo,
he
yeah, I was
has
going to say, don't
a new
forget Paulo.
report. Yeah, Paulo's got a new report from IBM, Regenerate Banking with AI. It's the IBM Global Outlook on banking and finance. So that's a big deal. So guys, really pay attention. Don't get left behind, right? Fin+AI is a real thing. Jamie Dimon said so not less than a week ago. He says he's got 200 people at JP Morgan Chase inside working on it, right? So this is not this isn't cryptocurrency, right? This is something that's here to stay. And
Yep.
all you got to do is look at the Nvidia stock, and you can see that AI is is here to stay, right? So thanks so much, John. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Remember to hang around for a minute after I shut off the recording
Sure.
so we can get the upload. Please don't exit. And I look forward to seeing you, and safe travels on
Thank
your
you.
trip, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to invite all my colleagues from around the world. I'll be, thank you for helping me to be involved with this event. So I invite all my colleagues who are working on access to finance issues and the use of artificial intelligence from anywhere in the world. Please submit your papers. We'll see how we can incorporate you, maybe even in an online session. Excited to have colleagues from all over the world to participate because I think this is a great event we can all learn from. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Have a great evening. All the best. Don't leave.
Thank you.